Baek Ji-hye didn't want to say yes, but when the envelope slid across the cafe table, heavy with cash, she couldn't say no. Not when the electricity bill was overdue. Not when her little sister needed new school shoes, and especially not when the woman staring at her across the table had the power to change everything with a single phone call. "Just pretend to date him," said Mrs. Kang, voice smooth like silk but cold like metal. "Nothing more. I need the press to see him with a responsible girl, someone modest, someone I can trust." Ji-hye looked down at the envelope again. Her hands trembled. "How long?" she asked. 3 months. School events only. You don't need to hold hands if you're uncomfortable, but smile and make it look real." Ji-hye bit her lip. "Why me?" Mrs. Kang smiled thinly. "You're invisible, clean, quiet, perfect." That night, Ji-hye sat in the corner of her tiny room, counting every bill in the envelope twice. She didn't cry, not yet, but she knew what she was trading. The next day, she met Kang Hyun-woo, the boy in question, the heir to the Kang group, the boy who wore tailored uniforms and $1,000 sneakers and didn't even look up from his phone when she sat across from him in the school garden. "You must be the new girlfriend," he said flatly. She nodded, he smirked. "My mom really has no limits, huh?" She stayed silent. He finally looked up. "You're not even going to defend yourself?" "I'm not here to impress you." That made him pause. He tilted his head slightly, studied her, then scoffed. "Whatever. Just follow me when the cameras show up." The first week was unbearable. He walked ahead of her in the hallways, never spoke during breaks, and when the student council president asked if they were serious, Hyun-woo laughed and said, "She's just cute enough not to be." Embarrassing. Ji-hye clenched her fists but said nothing. The money was still in her backpack, feeding her home, keeping the lights on. But something changed on Friday afternoon. They were posing for photos in front of the school fountain, a staged moment for the school's media club. She forced a smile. He looked bored. Then a bird flew overhead and pooped on his blazer. Everyone laughed. Ji-hye didn't. She took out a tissue and gently dabbed his shoulder. "You should go to the nurse's office." "I'll cover for you." Hyun-woo blinked, stared at her. For the first time, really looked at her, then muttered, "Whatever," and walked off. But he didn't throw away the tissue. He kept it. The next Monday, things shifted again. She walked into class and found a small coffee can on her desk, her favorite flavor. No note, no explanation. She looked across the room. Hyun-woo didn't meet her gaze, but there was the tiniest hint of a smirk on his lips. By Wednesday, they were sitting together during lunch, still silent but not cold. He let her speak about her part-time job, listened when she talked about her sister's piano competition, and once he asked, "Why do you work so much?" Ji-hye hesitated, then said, "Because I have no choice." He didn't laugh, just nodded, like he understood more than he let on. Friday night, he asked her to walk home with him. She agreed. Halfway through, it started to rain. He stopped, took off. His jacket held it over her head. "You'll catch a cold," he said, "but I don't get sick." She looked up at him. He was already walking, still holding the jacket above her, like it was natural, like it was nothing. But to her, it was everything. At home, her sister saw the jacket and asked, "Is that your boyfriend's?" Ji-hye froze, then whispered, "Something like that." Back at the Kang residence, Mrs. Kang sipped tea while watching the news. The photo of Ji-hye and Hyun-woo in the rain flashed across the screen. She smiled tightly. Perfect, but her eyes narrowed. She wasn't sure what exactly, but something about her son's face in that photo felt off, too soft, too real. That weekend, she sent Ji-hye a second envelope with a note. "Doing well, but remember, you're temporary." Ji-hye read the message twice, then tucked the envelope under her pillow and cried quietly for the first time. Not because she felt used, but because she wasn't sure where the pretending ended anymore. Ji-hye's life became a routine of pretending. She walked beside Hyun-woo at school like it was normal, smiled for photos like she wasn't terrified, answered questions about their relationship with vague phrases and half-truths. She's very calm. He's tolerable. They weren't lies, But they weren't real either. Not yet. At first, Hyun-woo barely looked at her during these events. He kept his headphones in, scrolled through his phone, barely spoke. But that changed after the third fake date. It was a school, volunteer event, planting trees behind the gymnasium. Mrs. Kang had arranged for them to volunteer together. Public image, polished stories. Ji-hye showed up in sneakers and old jeans. Hyun-woo showed up in designer boots. He stared at the mud like it had personally offended him. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. Ji-hye raised an eyebrow. "Take the shoes off." "What?" "Take them off. I'll bring you some old ones from the equipment shed." He looked at her like she was insane, but she was already walking, and 20 minutes later, he was in muddy size 10s, digging a hole with her under the cloudy sky. They worked in silence for a while, then he said out of nowhere, "My mom never lets me do things like this." She glanced at him. "You mean real things?" He nodded. "I don't think she believes I can handle them." Ji-hye thought about that, then handed him a bottle of water. Prove her wrong. He looked at her, surprised, then smiled. A small private smile, like it had been waiting. The next week, their names appeared together in the school newsletter. Couple of the month, Kang Hyun-woo and Baek Ji-hye, a surprising duo that works. Ji-hye stared at the page, shook her head. Hyun-woo just smirked. "I told you people eat this stuff up." She glanced at him. "You like it?" He shrugged. "Let them think what they want. Even if it's a lie?" He paused, then said quietly, "Not all of it is." One night, Ji-hye was late leaving her part-time job. Rain again. No umbrella. She was walking toward the bus stop when a car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down. It was Hyun-woo. "Get in." She hesitated. He leaned over and opened the passenger door. "You're going to get sick again." "I don't get sick," she said, mimicking his voice from before. He chuckled but waited. She got in. They didn't talk much on the drive. He dropped her off in front of her apartment building. Before she got out, he said, "Bring your sister." "Next time." She blinked. "What?" "To the Cherry Blossom Fair this weekend. Bring her." She stared at him, then smiled. "Okay." Saturday came, and Ji-hye arrived with her little sister, Ji-yoon. She was shy at first, hiding behind Ji-hye's arm. Hyun-woo knelt down. "Hi, Ji-yoon, I'm Hyun-woo. You like cotton candy?" She nodded. He handed her a pink one the size of her head. She smiled, and that was it. He had her loyalty forever. They spent the afternoon walking through booths, playing games, laughing. For once, it wasn't pretending. It felt real, so real it scared. Her at one booth, Ji-yoon tried to win a plushie, missed all 3 shots. Hyun-woo stepped up behind her, tossed the last ball, and won. He handed her the toy. She hugged it like it was treasure. "Thank you." "Oppa," she whispered. Ji-hye froze. It was the first time she'd heard someone call him that. He didn't flinch, didn't tease, just smiled and ruffled Ji-yoon's hair. That night, back at home, Ji-yoon asked, "Is he going to be our brother now?" Ji-hye laughed but didn't answer. She couldn't. The next morning, she found a text from Hyun-woo. "Thanks for today. Your sister is awesome, so are you." She read it 3 times, saved it. At school, people started whispering differently. "She's glowing." "He's actually nicer now. They look good together." Ji-hye ignored it. Hyun-woo acted like he didn't care. But one afternoon, as they sat together behind the gym eating lunch, he asked, "Why do people think I'm cold?" She looked at him. "You act like nothing matters." "Maybe I don't. Want to be disappointed." She didn't respond. Just offered him a piece of kimbap. He took it. No hesitation. That night, Mrs. Kang reviewed her PR reports. Public reaction, positive. But her fingers tapped the table. Restless. She clicked on a school photo. Ji-hye laughing. Hyun-woo looking at her, not the camera. And in that look, Mrs. Kang saw something she hadn't paid for. Affection, uncontrolled, unplanned, unacceptable. The next day, Ji-hye arrived at school and found another envelope in her locker. No money, just a note. "Don't forget the rules." She stared at it, felt the weight settle back onto her shoulders. But when Hyun-woo walked by and casually nudged her shoulder, she smiled anyway, because no one had ever looked at her like he did now. The wind carried cherry blossom petals across the school courtyard. Ji-hye sat on the rooftop steps, eyes closed, headphones in, lost in a rare moment of peace, until someone tapped her sneaker with theirs. She looked up. Hyun-woo. He didn't say anything, just sat beside her. For a long time they listened to the same song, sharing one set of earbuds. When the track ended, she spoke first. "I like it up here." "Me too," he said quietly. Then softer, "It's the only place I don't have to pretend." She turned her head, and for a moment, their faces were too close, too familiar. Her breath caught. He looked down at her lips. She didn't move, didn't blink. But just before anything could happen, a loud slam of a rooftop door shattered the moment. They jerked apart. That night, Ji-hye couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, heart racing. Her sister, already asleep, clutched the plushie Hyun-woo had won for her, and Ji-hye wondered, when did fake start feeling real? The next day, Hyun-woo walked her to class. Just walked. No cameras, no audience. When they reached the door, he turned and said, "Come with me this weekend." She frowned. "Where?" "My family's villa in Jeju. There's a school break coming." She hesitated. "Is that part of the deal?" He shrugged. "No, it's just me asking." Ji-hye opened her mouth, then nodded. The trip felt like another world. The beach, the sky, the silence between them. It wasn't awkward anymore, it was comfortable. They cooked ramen together in the small kitchen. He burned the eggs. She laughed. They slept in separate rooms, but she could hear his quiet guitar playing through the wall late at night. On the second morning, she found him outside with a sketchbook. He closed it quickly. She raised an eyebrow. "You draw?" "Barely." "Can I see?" "No." "Then I'll take it." He smirked and handed it over. Inside were pages of tiny details. Hands' eyes, a girl reading under a tree, a sister with a big smile, a boy standing in the rain without an umbrella, watching from afar. Ji-hye flipped to the last page. It was her, laughing. She looked up, stunned. "I didn't know you saw me like that." "I didn't either," he said, "until I couldn't stop." Her chest tightened, but before she could speak, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, frowned, then sighed. "My mom." Again. He didn't answer, just silenced it, then looked at Ji-hye. "I hate going back." "Then don't." He smiled sadly. "I wish it were that easy." Back in Seoul, Mrs. Kang sat in her office reviewing photos from the Jeju trip. Her assistant had forwarded them from an anonymous school blog. She zoomed in, Ji-hye resting her head on Hyun-woo's shoulder. Sunset behind them, Hyun-woo smiling, not for the camera but for her. Mrs. Kang's jaw tightened. She stood up, walked to the window, and dialed a number. The next day, Ji-hye's manager at the convenience store called her in early. "I heard. Say about your new boyfriend," he said with a grin. "Big shot chaebol?" She laughed nervously. Not exactly, but when she clocked out that night, Mrs. Kang was waiting outside, in a black car, window rolled down. "Get in." Ji-hye's stomach dropped, but she obeyed. The ride was silent. They stopped at a quiet tea house. Inside, Mrs. Kang didn't smile, didn't offer tea, just opened her bag, pulled out a new envelope, thicker, heavier. "Your contract was clear," she said. "No kissing, no sleepovers, no falling in love." Ji-hye stiffened. "I never—" "Do not lie to me," her voice cut like ice. "You may think he cares about you, but he doesn't know what's best for him." "I do." Ji-hye stared at the table. "I didn't plan any of this. I'm not here to discuss feelings." Mrs. Kang pushed the envelope forward. "Take this. Leave him." Ji-hye didn't move. "He'll hate me. Better now than later. You are a temporary chapter, Baek Ji-hye. He will forget." Tears burned in her eyes. She stood up. Didn't touch the envelope. "Maybe he will, but I won't." Then walked out. That night, Hyun-woo called her. Twice. No answer. He texted, "Are you okay? Did I do something?" No reply. She deleted every photo on her phone, every message, but couldn't delete the sound of his laugh or the way his hands trembled when he drew. At school, she avoided him, said she was tired, that she needed to focus on studies. He looked hurt, but nodded. Didn't push. until the day he found the envelope his mother left in her locker, unopened. He stormed into her classroom during break, slapped it on her desk. "What is this?" She froze. "I told you," she whispered. "We were never real." He stepped back, eyes glassy. "Don't say that. I have to. You said you liked me." I lied. But she didn't. And he knew it. Which is why, that night, he broke his guitar, smashed the sketchbook, and cried into a hoodie that still smelled like her. The school hallway was quiet. Too quiet. Hyun-woo stood in front of Ji-hye's locker, fingers shaking, holding the envelope like it burned his hand. He opened it. Inside was a printed contract. Signed, sealed, 3 months, smile in public. No physical affection, no real emotion, and yet there had been all of that, so much more than ink could ever define. He waited outside her classroom. She walked out and froze. Their eyes met. He held up the paper. "You really signed this?" She didn't answer. "Was any of it real?" he asked. She forced her voice to stay steady. "No." His hands dropped to his sides. "That's not what your eyes said. I lied with those too." He laughed once, bitter. "You're not even good at pretending." That night, Ji-hye stayed up late. Her sister slept next to her, hugging the plushie Hyun-woo had won. Ji-hye touched her sister's cheek, then looked away quickly, fighting tears. She remembered what Mrs. Kang had said after the tea house meeting. "If you want the money to keep helping your family, you'll end this, publicly and convincingly, or the support disappears. The scholarship, the donations, everything." She didn't have a choice, but that didn't make it hurt less. Meanwhile, Hyun-woo locked himself in his room, ripped the sketchbook in half, threw the guitar across the floor, shattered a photo frame, then slumped against the wall, head in his hands, breathing hard. No tears, just silence, the kind that swallows you whole. Mrs. Kang stood outside his door, heard the crash, but didn't flinch, didn't speak, just turned and walked away. The next day, Ji-hye skipped school. Hyun-woo sat alone at their usual bench. Her absence screamed louder than any words. When a teacher asked, "Where's your girlfriend?" he said nothing. By the end of the week, rumors had spread. She dumped him. He looked destroyed. Maybe she used him. Ji-hye heard them all, but stayed silent. Because the truth was worse. She hadn't just left him. She'd let him think she never cared. Her phone buzzed. One new message, Kang Hyun-woo. She didn't open it, just deleted it, then curled up on her bed and cried into the pillow because no one had ever made her feel chosen before, and now she had thrown that away. Across town, Hyun-woo sat in his car, parked outside her part-time job, watched through the window as she helped a customer. She looked tired, older, like she was carrying something heavy. When she turned and saw the car, she froze. He looked away and drove off. Later that night, Ji-hye walked home in the rain. No umbrella, no jacket. When she reached her front door, a box was waiting. Inside, a small telescope, a note. "You once said you never got to look up, so I'm giving you the sky." No name. But she knew who it was, and that was what broke her. She ran inside, collapsed to her knees, and finally sobbed out loud. Not for the money, not for the lie, but for the boy who had offered her the stars and didn't know she'd already built a wall between them. At school, things only got worse. Hyun-woo stopped showing up to class. When he did, he was quiet, eyes dull. He stopped responding in basketball practice, stopped eating lunch. Mrs. Kang tried to redirect attention with new headlines, but school noticed. So did the teachers. Even the principal asked, "Is your son okay?" She smiled politely. "He's just overwhelmed." But deep down, she knew. This wasn't just a phase. This was heartbreak, and she had orchestrated it. The spring showcase approached. Ji-yoon's piano recital was set for the final weekend. Ji-hye thought about not going, not smiling, not pretending, but her sister had worked too hard and deserved at least that. So she went, sat in the second row, face blank, heart numb. Backstage, Ji-yoon waited, holding her sheet music. Then whispered to her teacher, "Do you think he'll come?" "Who, dear?" My sister's boyfriend." The teacher smiled sadly. "Sometimes people surprise us." And then, just as the lights dimmed, a tall figure walked across the stage. Not part of the program, not expected, wearing a blazer. Holding a single white flower, the audience murmured. Ji-hye sat up, mouth slightly open. Hyun-woo stood at center stage, looked straight at her, and said, "She was paid to pretend, to smile, to stand beside me." But what she didn't notice is that I wasn't pretending. He held up the flower, hands trembling. "She made me feel human, she made me feel seen. And even if she was faking, what I felt was real." The audience gasped, students whispered. But Ji-hye, she stood up, eyes wide, heart pounding, and walked to the edge of the stage. He stepped down slowly, offered her the flower. "I don't want your money," she whispered. "I don't have it," he replied. "I gave it to your sister's music fund." She blinked, tears welling. "You idiot." He smiled. "You're idiot." And then, in front of everyone, he kissed her, soft, certain, the kind of kiss that ends a lie and starts something real. Mrs. Kang stood in the back of the auditorium, watching, eyes unreadable. One tear rolled down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. The applause was deafening, not for the confession, not just for the kiss, but because for once someone had said the truth out loud, something everyone felt, but no one had dared to speak. Ji-hye stood frozen in Hyun-woo's arms, tears still wet on her cheeks. The flower trembled in her fingers. Somewhere in the audience, her sister cheered, teachers whispered, students stared, but Ji-hye didn't care. She wasn't hiding anymore. Not behind contracts, not behind fear, not behind fake smiles. This was real. After the showcase, they sat on the school rooftop, the same spot where it all started, where the first almost kiss was interrupted. Now the silence was comfortable again, but full of meaning. She held the flower in her lap. He watched her carefully. "I didn't know. If you'd come," she said. "I didn't know if I'd be brave enough." She looked at him. "You were brave," he smirked. "Only because you were the first person who saw through all my noise." Her voice dropped. "And you were the first person who made me feel like more than a checklist." They sat quietly. Below them, students buzzed about what had just happened. Rumors would spread. Stories would twist. But the truth was here, on this rooftop, in the way they looked at each other, like the rest of the world didn't matter. Later that evening, Mrs. Kang sat alone in her garden, a cup of untouched tea beside her. She scrolled through her phone, finding photos from the recital. There they were, Hyun-woo and Ji-hye, holding hands, not for the cameras, not for the deal, just for each other. She closed her eyes, exhaled slowly, then finally whispered, "He looks happy." It didn't taste sweet, but it didn't burn either. Back at Ji-hye's apartment, her sister danced around the room. "You're famous now," she giggled. "Everyone's talking about you." Ji-hye smiled, brushing her fingers over the flower now resting in a vase by the window. "Let them talk. Is he your real boyfriend now?" Ji-hye paused, then nodded. "Yeah, he is." The next morning, Hyun-woo waited by her gate. No bodyguards, no car, just him, with 2 cups of coffee. When she stepped outside, surprised, he said, "No more hiding. I want to walk you to school." She blinked. "That's not your style." He grinned. "You change my style." She laughed. They started walking. At school, whispers turned to stares, then smiles. A few girls clapped. Boys made teasing noises. But no one was cruel, not anymore. Maybe because the truth had changed things, maybe because people could feel what was real. Mrs. Kang visited the school a week later to attend a meeting with the board, but while passing by the courtyard, she saw them. Hyun-woo and Ji-hye sitting under a tree, laughing, eating lunch, sharing headphones again. Just like before. But this time, it was no performance. Just 2 teenagers, learning how to love in the open. She watched for a moment, then walked away, saying nothing. At the end of the semester, Ji-hye stood in front of her class, giving a short speech for a group project. Her hands trembled at first, but then she saw Hyun-woo in the back row, nodding, smiling, and she found her voice, strong, clear, sure of herself, for the first time. They didn't say, "I love you," right away. But they didn't have to. It was in the way he waited for her every day, the way she saved a seat at lunch, the way her sister called him Oppa without hesitation, and the way they always looked at each other, like they were still amazed it had all happened. One evening they visited the park where they had once staged their first fake date. Hyun-woo stopped by the same bench. "You remember this spot?" he asked. "How could I forget?" He pulled something from his pocket, a small pendant shaped like a star. "I never got to give this to you." She tilted her head. "What's it for?" He looked at her softly. "To remind you that even when things start fake, real feelings always find their way." She took it, clutched it tight, then leaned forward and kissed him again. This time, no cameras, no audience, no scripts, just them. That summer, they kept their relationship quiet again, but not because they had to, because they wanted to protect what was theirs. Something fragile, something earned, something real. And sometimes when the sky was clear, they would meet on the rooftop again, not to hide, not to pretend, but to sit side by side and look up together.